Welcome, everyone, to Black Belt Life, our weekly talk show centering around the journey to Black Belt and beyond. I'm your host, Darren Myers, and I'm owner of Virginia Martial Arts Center. I've been training for 47 years in several arts, and I'm also a certified defensive tactics instructor. Please understand everything I'm talking about today. I'm not trying to disrespect any martial art, any students, any instructors. I'm just pointing out the observations I've had over my years and my own experiences. So let's dive into this topic about self-defense. How do you prepare yourself for a violent situation? Do you even think a violent situation could happen to you? I saw in the news this week an interview of a man who was a survivor of the mass shooting that happened in Colorado. And my heart and soul and prayers go out to the families and the victims of that horrible, horrible thing. But anyway, he told the interviewer that he was simply going into the store to buy a drink, and it almost cost him his life. It's hard to imagine the terror and the awakening he had from that horrific incident. So we're going to talk about one of the things you must have in order to hopefully survive a self-defense situation. And this is going to be the first of a three-part series where we're going to talk about the physical control, mental control, and the emotional control it takes to defend yourself. These three states are not the only things that could bring you success in a confrontation with a violent criminal, but they will cover a lot of the very important points, I hope. Okay, so let's start with mental control. Do you have the mental faculties and knowledge to defend yourself? Any uncertainty in our minds can lead us to hesitate at a moment when you need to make a life or death decision. And that could be ultimately the worst thing that could happen to you. Do you know what the vital strike points of the body are? Do you know what parts of the body are best weapons? These things come from having some level of training to make the things we have learned become conditioned responses. In other words, we can respond to an attack without having to actively think about it. It has been practiced so many times in training that our counter move happens automatically. Without this kind of knowledge, people usually freeze like deer in the headlights because they don't know what to do. So, do you have any knowledge of how to actually defend yourself? Let's hope so. If not, think about getting some. Mental control starts with awareness of our surroundings and what is going on around us. We must be alert when we are in public, in a parking lot, in stores, movie theaters, places of worship, concerts, etc. Our head should be on a swivel to just take in the people and the situations around us. This heightened sense of awareness doesn't mean that you need to be paranoid all the time, just aware with a plan in mind. Look for the exits when you go in a building or a store or a restaurant. This could be important not just for a sudden violent encounter, but what would happen if a fire broke out or there was a sudden storm and part of the building collapsed? There was a university study that was done a few years ago about awareness among average Americans, and it found that 60% of people were totally unaware of their surroundings a majority of the time. 60%. And really, that's not hard to believe when we are so distracted by you know what. And personally, I mean, I know I've seen going into like Walmart or, a store or whatever, people on the phone, not paying any attention to what's going on around them and actually walking into a pole or almost being hit by a car or running into somebody else. So we also need to use our common sense. And I recently read about a man who got robbed at an ATM at 2 a.m. in the morning. 2 a.m. What are you doing at an ATM at 2 a.m.? If a person engages in risky behavior, they're asking for trouble. So you've got to be smarter than that. We have to be smarter than that. Criminals are opportunists. So we need to take the opportunities away from them in order to help eliminate the crime. Don't put yourself in a situation where you could be a victim. Be smart. We must also listen to our instincts and go with our gut. If it feels like it might be a bad decision, it probably is. Let me tell you a story of my mother. Okay, my sweet mom. Years and years ago, and I mean this was a long time ago, and I told this story last week, so real quick version of it. She was coming out of a store. It was right about closing time, and as she walked out, the beeline to her car, between that and her, there was a group of three like older teens, young adults, standing by a pole. And she thought, maybe I should walk around. Maybe I should go back in the store. Maybe, they're not going to bother me. And she got past them, and the next thing you know, bang, she's on the pavement being drugged because they had come up behind her, and one of them had grabbed the strap of her pocketbook, and she fell off the curb onto the pavement, was being drugged across the parking lot. Fortunately, the strap broke, and they took off, and that was the end of it. But she didn't listen to her gut. She didn't listen to that little voice inside her head going, this isn't good. You shouldn't do this. Do something else, okay? Be safe. So a great part of mental control is also our self-defense mindset. Now, society teaches us that we should not fight. We should not be violent. As kids, we were taught not to fight because if someone punches you in the school and you defend yourself, you both get suspended or worse. So people are taught if something bad happens that you should call 911 and that someone will come and make the bad guy go away. That's not always going to happen. Matter of fact, that's rarely the case. The cops show up after the crime a lot of times. Self-defense is up to you, and you have the legal and moral right to protect yourself. To understand the mental control that it will take to defend yourself, you also have to understand the mindset of the criminal. Criminals, they're antisocial animals that have no concern for your safety, your family, your belongings, or any of the rules of society. They want to put upon you anything that they can, and it's against the law. It's illegal. It's immoral. It's corrupt, dishonest, sinful, and just plain wrong. But that doesn't matter to them. Not in the very least. This kind of person cannot be talked down or negotiated with usually. You must understand that not everyone is a normal person. Okay? Criminals prey on normal people because they don't want to follow the rules of society. So don't expect them to. Now, we as law-abiding citizens must understand that there is a place and a time for socially accepted violence against a criminal such as this. And that is self-defense. That is the same socially accepted violence that a soldier might use during time of war or a policeman might do enforcing the law. This type of accepted violence is your right to use in a brutal situation. Now, your mindset has to become one of absolute survival. Are you willing to do anything, whatever is necessary, to get out of the situation and arrive home safely? You have to know that in your mind, you are not going to let anyone hurt, murder, rape, kidnap, or cripple you. You must be willing to assert your right to protect yourself and use whatever means necessary to get the job done. Now, I've taught many self-defense seminars over the years. I've always had some people in the class that had a difficult time imagining themselves sticking their fingers like in someone's eyes or striking them across the throat. I've heard from some of the participants, I couldn't do that to someone. Well, there must be something in your mind that switches you from an ordinary, law-abiding, going about your day, getting the shopping done kind of person to a vicious, growling dog that is ready to tear a person to ribbons in order to survive and return to their den. We must be able to transform into something like the Incredible Hulk, okay, or a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of ferocious fighter that is going to hit, claw, scratch, and bite our way to safety. Now, how do you become that type of person? Who can throw that switch and become such a determined fighter? Well, training, of course, helps a lot. But for the average person, it's usually, unfortunately, going to take an event that happens to you or someone you know before the reality of the need for self-defense becomes a priority in their mind and in their life. In the horrible shooting in Colorado, the police chief, Maris Harold, I hope I'm saying that right, was talking about how shocked she was in a very shaky voice. And she was saying that because she only lives 3 blocks from the store where the horrific event happened. Now, this is somebody who's had a lot of dealings with violent situations because she's the police chief. I mean, she's been around, obviously, police work for a long time. And I'm sure that many of the residents are equally shaken and now much more aware of the possibility of something happening to them. It's unfortunate that it takes a terrible incident like that to bring people into reality that something can happen to them sometime in their lifetime. You need to be prepared for it every day. Now, in the United States, there are between 1 to 1.2 million aggravated assaults every year, which is about 1 out of every 300 people. Those aren't good odds for the average person because it means that there were possibly 1.2 million attempted murders. But modern medicine and our advanced trauma centers kept a great many of those becoming murders. But many of those people end up with lifelong crippling disabilities from their attacks, not to mention the mental anguish that they and their family go through. Your lifetime odds of being a victim of a violent crime are like 1 in 3. That's not good. So what we have to do is realize that we are swimming in the same pool as the sharks. When will they strike? Who will they strike? Is a mystery until it actually happens. We have to be mentally cautious, more aware, prepared, and ready to open up and say, yes, it can happen to me. I'm going to be ready for it. Your mindset must be that if someone wants to hurt you, your family, you are going to make them stop. You will survive. Your will to survive must be stronger than the criminal's will to hurt you. So you have to have a warrior mentality, and that must be ready to be turned on at a moment's notice, and it doesn't turn off until the threat is over. Now, we're going to continue next week with this subject when we cover the physical control necessary in a self-defense encounter. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave me any comments you may have on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel, Karate Family TV, and please subscribe to the channel to receive notices of when we go live and post new videos. Thank you so much for watching, And please, please pray for the victims in Colorado and their families, and for those who've lost loved ones during the pandemic. I'm Darren Myers. Remember that karate begins and ends with respect. And let's have respect for each other. We are responsible for our behavior. Actions have consequences. There is no excuse for bad manners, and we lead by example. Stay alert, stay safe. See you next week.